Hello everybody! I'm bringing it back. I've decided that this is going to come back. I miss talking to everybody. I miss seeing Vito and Josie. I miss seeing your faces. Miss knowing that you know what's going on in my life, and miss knowing what's going on in your lives. And so much has changed. I'm going to reframe myself just a little bit. So much has changed in the last, say, it has been 6 months or so since we did this? More even, maybe? I don't know. Since then, so much has changed. Vito, you're married now. Josie, you're in nursing school now. I've changed my major to computer science. Tessa's come to TWU here. Like, everything is like changing so much, and I think it's really important to stay in touch with each other. And I think this was a great way to do it, and I'm kind of sad that we stopped, that we all got really busy and sort of just stopped doing it. And I want to bring it back with a few amendments. I know time was a big issue for me in creating these and editing them and everything. So I decided for me to alleviate that is I'm not going to edit these videos anymore. I'm just going to sit in front of the camera and talk and say what I'm thinking, talk about what's going on, and kind of just catch up with everybody. It's not so much important to me to have my videos edited as it is that you just know what's happening in my life. And so that's my kind of concession to make this work with a more busy schedule. Whether or not you guys make videos at all, or if you don't want to edit your videos either, or you do, like, you can make any decision you want, but I want to make these for at least for me, so you guys know what's happening, and we stay connected a little bit. And I'd love to hear from you guys too. Mariana, Mom, Dad, Vito, Josie, anybody. I just love to hear about it and talk about it. So, on that note, I do want to talk to you guys today. Oddly enough, not about my life. I'll briefly talk about what I'm doing and stuff, but I do have a topic I want to talk about today. So I'm a computer science major now. I actually made a friend. You want to meet him? I made a friend in a computer science class the other day. And his name is Reddy. Tessa and I named him Reddy. Are you ready to meet him? Ta-da! They let us rent these in computer science class, and we can like plug them into the computer and program them, and they like dance and flash lights and stuff. They're so cool. It's pretty cool. I got one to work actually in computer science class. I might show that to you guys later in a later video. Anyway though, but yeah, I'm in assembly language classes and Java class for the Java language. I learned Perl last semester. Also into some basic courses. No math this semester. Praise the Lord for that. And I'm just kind of I'm doing pretty well, actually. I made the Chancellor's List last semester, which was pretty awesome. First time I did that. And hoping to do it again this semester. So it's going pretty well. But on to the topic that I want to talk about today is the Hobbit movies, okay? I've had some time to stew over them and think about them and research about them and learn about them more and more and more. And Vito and I especially, but all of us, are huge Lord of the Rings fans. And I want to talk about it because it's important to me that it's talked about, and I share my ideas. So I'm going to kind of cover The Hobbit in 3 parts because unnecessary 3-part trilogies demand unnecessary 3-part reviews. First part is the movie as it is as a movie, as it relates to other movies. And then second part is as a movie relating to the book that it was based on. And the third point is the third movie, because I needed a whole section to talk about the third movie, please. So as a movie relating to other movies, it's not as good as Lord of the Rings. You can't claim that the original trilogy is not as good as The Hobbit. The Hobbit is far lower than Lord of the Rings in quality and acting and everything I can think of. It's just not a superior, it's a lesser effort, lesser experience. But there's a reason why. And it was the intent, I believe the main reason was the intent and behind it, and then the method to approach it, okay? The intent behind Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, I hate that I have to specify now, but the original trilogy, they wanted to tell the story. Peter Jackson grew up, he said he always wanted there to be a Lord of the Rings movie, and he finally realized that he could make it, and then he set about it, and he managed to find a way to do it, and he did it. It was his drive that kind of led the project, and it was a work of love for him. He really enjoyed doing it. With The Hobbit, Peter Jackson wasn't originally going to direct it, and he didn't want to make it. He didn't want to do it, and he ended up doing it. Kind of was pressured into it almost, for money reasons in the end. It seems. I don't know everything about it, but that's the way it came off to me. He didn't want to make it 3 parts. He wanted it to be 2 parts, and it didn't end up the way he wanted it. Now, the effort and the direction behind doing it, once it was decided to be done, in Lord of the Rings, I've seen a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. I've seen everything. I'm a bit of a nerd about it. But everyone said, the guys, Peter Taylor, I think his name is, I might be getting that wrong though, he was the director of Weta Workshops, who did all the props and almost all the props and stuff for Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy. And he said that in most fantasy movies, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. You have to say, I know that's not real, but it's a movie, so I'm going to go with it anyway. He said we can't have that happen for this movie because the world is so big and everything's so important in it. You have to believe every bit. And so we have to make this look as real as possible. And so he set about that. And they pretty much hired the entire industry of New Zealand for doing this, and they had every craftsman, every metal worker, all the pottery makers, and everyone was working on this movie. They made almost all the props, pretty much all the props, and then most of the sets even were completely real, or at least miniatures. They call them bigatures because they were these huge miniature sets. If The Hobbit, it's CGI. Everything's CGI. The villains are CGI. Most of the orcs are CGI. The scenes are largely CGI. A lot of the action is CGI. So much of it is CGI, and it's just so obvious that it is. If you compare the two, Lord of the Rings is almost 15 years old, and it looks incredible. It looks real because it is. All the stuff in it is real for the most part. Hobbit movie looks so much less real. All I have to do is tell you, if you've seen it. By the way, spoilers for everything. If you've seen the Rivendell scene, not the Rivendell, the Mirkwood, King Thranduil, elf scene basically, where they're escaping on the barrels out of the elf city. They destroyed so many things in that movie, and they totally messed up the intent of it. But anyway, it looks so fake, all the action and the elves and okay. I have to take a moment to say elves in this movie. In Lord of the Rings, they like Legolas, for example, was very obviously very skilled, and he could do a lot of things, and I will admit that sometimes he went a little overboard, but it's like Peter Jackson or whoever was doing the thinking on this said, you know what made Lord of the Rings popular? Legolas doing crazy things. So all we're going to do in this movie is make Legolas do crazy things, and that's going to make it so big and so popular. That's a great idea, and that seems like what they did. They just had Legolas and that other elf, Toriel, who I'll get to her. We'll talk about her in the third movie part. But they're crazy gymnasts, and they do a bunch of acrobatics and flips, and she shoots arrows out of the air and all this stuff, and it makes them invincible. And then Legolas can't die because he's in the next movie, so anything with him loses all tension. And he's not in the books anyway, but we'll get to that. Now, so compared to the movie Lord of the Rings, original trilogy, this is going to be a long video, by the way. Bear with me. Compared to the original trilogy, Lord of the Rings, it's just not as good. Now, what is it more like to me? Well, it's a harsh criticism, but it's closer to me in quality to the Star Wars prequels than it is to Lord of the Rings original trilogy. I say that for this reason. When you watch the Star Wars 4 through 6, and then watch 1 through 3, you get the idea that George Lucas made the first ones, the 4, 5, 6, and said, you know what made these popular? It was made popular by the pratfalls, like the gags and stuff. Made popular by the sword fights, and nothing else. And so they proceeded to make Star Wars Star Wars prequels with gags and pratfalls for babies, appealing to a younger generation than the movie was intended to cater to. And then sword fights, which were actually pretty cool sometimes. Big battles and stuff, those were decent. And then no character development, no compassion for anything, and they just went from there. And that's kind of how it came off. And The Hobbit comes off similar to me. It's like they said, you know what made Lord of the Rings good was the romance, the action, like the sword fighting, and nothing else. So they proceeded, and the silliness of Merry and Pippin, it seems, and they went on from that and made The Hobbit. And so you have dwarves who are absurd in most cases, big extended fight scenes where they don't belong, and again I'll talk about this in the third part, and a romance that is so contrived and so unnecessary and so obviously there for no other reason than to be there, not there for any reason that it needed to be. It was just there because it was there, to appeal to another demographic, and it's stupid. Okay, that's my thought on it related to other movies. Related to the book, The Hobbit. That went on for way longer than I thought it would, but I don't care. I'm going to make this video. The Hobbit book related to the Hobbit movies. First of all, the Hobbit book is shorter than any of the individual Lord of the Rings books. And the original trilogy was made one book per movie, basically. And those were, again, longer books individually than The Hobbit is. And The Hobbit is one book. The Hobbit was 3 movies. Total of about an hour and a half less running time total in those 3 movies than there are in the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. The problem is, in the Lord of the Rings movies, there was thousands of pages of content. Probably thousands. Over 1,000 pages of content, I'm sure. In The Hobbit, there was like 200 or 300 or something like that. But like less than a third of the material and only 1 hour less runtime total. So there's going to be so much filler. I knew that going into it. There's going to be so much filler, so much fluff, so much unnecessary garbage, and it was going to drag down the movie if they didn't do it right. Okay, I'm not against the idea of adding things in to flesh out a story, but you can't make an adaptation of a book unless you're going to make the changes that make sense. Okay. So Legolas being in the movie didn't add anything to the story of the characters. It only added action. It added nothing else. And people were like, oh, he was such a sympathetic character. He wasn't, though. We never grew to know him for like what he really felt. He said things, but we never felt anything when he said them because it wasn't backed up by character development. He was just there to do flips and acrobatics and shoot things and have a big fight scene at the end. Unnecessary completely. Tauriel, I'll mention her briefly here. I'm going to really talk about her later. But Tauriel was completely unneeded. She wasn't even in Tolkien's world. She was entirely fabricated. Didn't need to be there. Was completely a love interest, nothing else. Okay, talk about that later. Radagast, the brown wizard. I dislike this character almost more than anything else I can possibly tell you, because he isn't described as a bumbling idiot who smokes weed apparently. Like, when people smoke pipes all the time in Lord of the Rings, but when Radagast smokes a pipe, he makes this face like, weed or whatever. Like he's smoking something like illegal, and it's stupid. It's so dumb. And he has bird poop on his head, and he rides a sleigh drawn by rabbits. If I told you there was a character who smoked a funny pipe, who had bird poop on his head, who wore a funny hat and brown robes and talks funny, had bad teeth, and rode a sleigh drawn by rabbits, you'd tell me he was a cartoon character. No, he's a wizard who's supposed to be the highest order of beings in the Lord of the Rings world, almost. He's on the same level of Saruman and Gandalf, and then the 2 blue wizards, wherever they are. He's on that order, and he's the third on that order. It goes, in this context, it goes Saruman, then Gandalf, then Radagast, but he's still on that order, and he's pretty much a bumbling fool the entire time. He doesn't do anything productive, and he is a gag character for little kids to laugh at, and it's pathetic. It really is. And he's one of my least favorite characters in this entire world, and I really love the idea of Radagast. I was excited when I knew he would be in there before I saw a picture of him. I'm like, they could really do something cool with another wizard character, and they didn't. It was just dumb and stupid. I didn't like it at all, and I wish he wasn't in there at all. They cut out all the scenes with him, and it would be a better movie. Whew. I know it's just not just like the book, and I wasn't expecting it to be. Like I said, they had to add stuff to make that runtime 3 movies, which they shouldn't have done in the first place, but they did. but they added stuff that didn't add story. It added either action. Okay, here's the thing. The Hobbit is a character story. It's a character arc story. Okay, Bilbo starts out. He doesn't want to go on an adventure. He doesn't realize he has that spirit in him, the adventurous spirit. He doesn't have that. He doesn't realize it. It takes Gandalf pushing him out of his door, and him kind of being forced into circumstances that he's not comfortable with. The trolls, the spiders, the goblins, Gollum, then eventually Smaug the dragon. And I'll give the movie this: when it focused on those things, the movie was actually very, very good. I love Bilbo's conversation with Smaug. I love Bilbo's conversation with Gollum. That was done so well. I loved. I didn't love, but I thought it was the trolls were pretty good. That whole scene was pretty good. I really enjoyed almost everything with Bilbo in it. I actually liked, but they made it less about Bilbo, more about Thorin and his quest, and then a war, which didn't need to be what it was. It was in the book, but it was only like 2 or 3 pages, if that, in the book. But it was an entire movie. I don't understand what the idea behind it was, but it failed in my eyes. Okay, so that being said, but they made it a war story almost exclusively. They added battle scenes where they didn't need to be. They assumed that guys would like the action, girls would like the romance story, kids would like Radagast and the silly dwarves doing silly things and making people laugh. But then compare that to intense battles and people having their brothers killed. It doesn't fit so well to have that silly stuff in there anymore for kids, does it? I don't understand it. It's the same as when you have Jar Jar Binks and then like Anakin going crazy and killing children in the Star Wars prequels. Like, it just doesn't fit together. You can't mesh those together and say, oh, it's for kids and adults. It's not friendly for kids, and adults are gonna think that the stupid things are just absolutely stupid. They're not gonna enjoy it as much. So I'll drop the book argument there. I could say I can go on forever, but I'm gonna drop that there and move on to the final aspect, which is the third movie. And I'll tell you this: when I saw the trailer for the third movie, I was actually excited. I didn't like either of the first ones that much, the Unexpected Journey or the Desolation of Smaug, but I was excited for the Battle of the Five Armies, because it looked like, I was thinking like, there's a battle and then there's kind of a finale, and you can't mess that up. It's not gonna be messed up. Now, in the book, the main villain of the entire thing was Smaug. He was the main point of the entire story. The climax, to me, when I read the book, the climax was his finish. Smaug's death was the climax, like that whole segment. And it was just the first 5 minutes of the third movie, and it was done, and they never even really talked about it again. It wasn't the point. It was like a minor inconvenience to do. That frustrated me so much. I'm like, that's the point. The point is now dead, and you have like 2 hours of movie left to conclude, to have the last 10 minutes of the movie stretched over 2 hours, and that is exactly what happened. Okay, in a way that no one could have expected. Now, then you have this whole political thing for like 30 minutes, and then a giant battle that goes over for about an hour and a half. It seemed like that battle was quite long. And you have trolls strapping points to their head and running into walls to break them, but then like clutching their head because now they have a headache because they ran headfirst into a wall. And then you have trolls with catapults on their back, and they like get down and like shoot catapults off their back, and it's like they were just trying to add things to make the bad guys seem scarier, but they weren't scary, not because they were not doing cool things or scary things, because they just didn't look scary, because they didn't look real. Azog and Bolg, who are just not scary characters to begin with, weren't intimidating at all because they looked fake. But anyway, I'll conclude this as fast as I can. But my main issue with the third movie, I did not like it at all. Alfred, okay? The character of Alfred, the Green Worm-tongue impersonator. By the way, this movie throws in so many Lord of the Rings references and foils and extra things that it's atrocious. But Alfred, gosh, I cringed every time he was on screen, not because the way they wanted me to. He wanted me to. He was like, oh, he's so evil, but he's also kind of funny. this is a great character. No. He's the most frustrating and stressfully horribly built character of all time. You switch him between being really like slimy and like gross and mean, like Grima Wormtongue was in Lord of the Rings, and Grima Wormtongue was a great character. But then he's like has money stuck into like a woman's blouse or whatever, so it's like he has breasts made of money, and he's pretending to be a woman so he can get out of fighting, and he has the dumbest lines, he has the dumbest moments, and it's like they continually shove his gag just onto you. Like his joke is he'll pretend to be all noble and heroic, and then right when the good person turns around, he shoves off the job to someone else. He does it like 6 times. Over and over again he does this. And it's like they don't think you're capable of understanding what he's supposed to be doing. And so they keep doing it over and over again, and I don't understand it. At all. And so there's him. If he was out of the movie, it'd be a better movie by at least 2 times. Okay? Toriel. At the end of the movie, spoiler, Toriel's love interest, who is Keely, I think. I don't even remember because it was so forgettable. Keely dies fighting a scary monster who isn't scary, because they killed his brother, and so he goes to avenge him, but he dies as well. They were in love, Toriel and Keely, and so she's sad. Okay, know who's not sad? Me. Do you know why? Because there was absolutely no character development for Keely, rather. No character development for Toriel. So you have 2 characters we don't know anything about. There's no development for their love interest thing, their romance. There's no development there. So you have 2 characters I don't care about. A love that doesn't make sense, so I don't care about it either. But then you expect me to feel something when that is hurt, and I don't. I don't feel anything. I'm not struck by that like, oh, it's so sad because they were in love. No, it's not what happens. You have to have investment to have care. For me to care, you have to invest in the character. Do you know what I felt when Boromir died? When Boromir died, I seriously teared up the first 4 times I watched that movie, because you see his struggle in just the course of 1 movie. They had 3 movies to make this work, and they could not do it. They didn't do it. They could have, but they didn't. But I cared about him. I'd seen his temptations and his struggle. I've seen his overconfidence, but also his fears. And I've seen his relationship with Aragorn grow over the course of the movie, and his relationship with Frodo and the 2 hobbits, and he helped them learn to sword fight and everything. And he's really integrated in the story, and you become to respect him for his nobility and his character. But then he dies defending those he loves. After his weakest moment, he redeems himself in the end, and then he dies. That's a good story, okay? We know nothing about Toriel and Keely or their romance, and so we don't care when it's ended. Okay, so there's those 2 things, and I can carry on about those, but this is already 23 minutes long, so I'm going to conclude. They tried to make The Hobbit too much, and in doing so, it became too little. There wasn't enough Bilbo in it. Bilbo was the best part. I thought Martin Freeman did a great job acting as Bilbo. He did a really, really excellent job. And he was almost left entirely out of the 3rd movie because there was bigger things for them to focus on, in their opinion, when in reality it would have been a better movie if they made it smaller, brought it down to 1, maybe 2 movies, and focused on Bilbo's character development. And you can have some action. You can have romance if you do it right. And whenever I sit down to watch a marathon of Lord of the Rings, I will not be watching the Hobbit movies. I don't know that I'll ever watch them again, honestly. There are so many individual things in all of the movies that I can't stand that I could go on for hours talking about them. But I will not say, oh, I really want to watch The Hobbit. I will continually say, if you look right here, at my desk, I have the 3-film collection of Lord of the Rings sitting at my desk, and I've watched them here this semester so far already. But I will never do that to The Hobbit. I will never buy the movies. I will never care about them, because they don't act like they want my attention like that. They wanted a film ticket, and they got it from me. So I guess they succeeded in the end. So guys, that went on for so long, and I'm so sorry that you have to watch this entire thing, and you may never watch it. Just because it's so long, you're going to see 25-minute video. Never. But just watch the first 5 minutes, if anything, because I really want to start this up again, and I want to talk to you guys and learn about what you guys are doing in your lives, and have that communication open up again. I miss it, and I'm excited to get it back if we want to do this again. So, again, sorry for the length of the video. I love you all so much. Have a great and wonderful time throughout the rest of your day, and bye.